everyone. Excited to dive into Atomic Habits with you all today.
Yeah, this one, it's been on my list for a while.
I know, right? It's one of those books that seems to be everywhere.
It is.
Mm.
Everywhere for good reason, though.
Totally. So many people talking about how it's helped them make positive changes.
It's packed with actionable strategies, that's for sure.
Exactly. You reached out wanting to level up your habits.
Oh, yeah, I've been meaning to.
Well, this deep dive is going to give you the tools to do just that.
Awesome, can't wait.
Okay, so Atomic Habits, it's all about tiny changes leading to remarkable results.
Right.
But I gotta admit, sometimes it sounds a bit like, I don't know, magical thinking.
Oh, I get it. It can sound almost too good to be true.
Right. Like, can making your bed really make a difference in other areas of your life?
It might sound a little far-fetched,
Hmm.
but the core concept here is the power of compounding.
Compounding. Like with, money.
Exactly. Think
Yeah.
about it. Small, consistent investments over time can grow into a significant sum.
Because of that compound interest, right?
Yeah. And habits work the same way. Small improvements, even 1% better each day, add up over time.
I see. So those tiny changes, they kind of snowball into something much bigger.
Precisely.
Uh.
The book actually has some pretty incredible examples of this in action.
Oh, tell me about them.
Well, there's the story of the British cycling team. They made these tiny 1% improvements to every aspect of their training.
Like what?
Oh, everything. Their equipment, their nutrition, even their sleeping habits.
Wow, that's attention to detail.
It paid off big time. They went on to dominate the Olympics, completely transforming British cycling.
That's amazing. Okay, so it's about finding those little areas where you can improve, even if they seem insignificant at first.
Right. And it's not just about external things either. The author, James Clear, shares his own story of recovering from a severe injury.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he used these tiny, consistent efforts to rebuild his strength and mobility.
That's inspiring. Okay, so this tiny changes thing is starting to make sense.
Good.
But I've got to confess, I've always been more of a go big or go home kind of person.
Ah, the grand goals.
Yeah, I set these huge targets for myself, then get totally overwhelmed and end up right back where I started.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
It's so frustrating.
And you know what? Atomic Habits
Mhm.
actually challenges that whole goals-first mentality.
Really?
It does.
Yeah.
Cleary argues that focusing solely on goals can actually be counterproductive.
How so?
Well, for one, it can make us delay our happiness. We think, once I achieve this goal, then I'll be happy.
Right, it's like we're constantly postponing our fulfillment.
Exactly. And it also creates this all-or-nothing pressure. Like,
Yeah.
if we don't reach the goal, we're a failure.
I've totally been there. It's like setting yourself up for disappointment.
It is. And that can be super demotivating.
I've even found myself getting stuck in this motion mode.
Motion mode.
Yeah, like I'll spend hours researching and planning, but not actually doing anything to move forward.
Ah, yes. The planning trap. Clear
Mhm.
talks about that too.
It's like I'm tricking myself into thinking I'm making progress.
Right. But without action, it's just a spinning of wheels.
Exactly.
So instead of fixating on that end goal, what if we shifted our focus to building systems?
Systems. Like, what do you mean by that?
Think of it this way. Instead of obsessing over writing a whole novel,
Which can be super daunting.
right, what if you focused on the systems that contribute to writing?
Okay, so like, what would those be?
Well, maybe it's setting aside 30 minutes each morning to write,
That's manageable.
or joining a writer's group for accountability.
So it's about creating structures that support the habits you want to build.
Precisely. It's about designing your environment for success, making it easier to do the things you want to do.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's less about white-knuckling your way to the finish line.
Right.
And more about setting yourself up for success.
Exactly. It's about making those good habits easier and those bad habits harder.
Okay, so how do we actually do that?
Well, Clear lays out this really practical framework called the 4 Laws of Behavior Change.
Oh, I've heard about those. What are they again?
Let's see, there's make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Okay, those sound pretty straightforward. But how do they actually play out in real life?
Oh, you'd be surprised how often these laws are already at work without us even realizing it.
Really?
Yeah. Take your morning coffee routine, for instance. You're already using the 4 laws.
My morning coffee? No way.
Think about it. You make it obvious by having your coffee maker ready to go.
Okay, that's true.
You make it attractive by using your favorite mug.
Okay, yeah, that's got to be the special mug.
Right. You make it easy by pre-measuring the coffee the night before.
I do that.
And you make it satisfying by enjoying it in your favorite spot, maybe with the morning news or something.
Wow, you're right. I never thought about my coffee routine that way, but it totally fits the four laws.
See? It's about understanding the cues and rewards that drive your habits.
And then tweaking those cues and rewards to make the good habits easier.
And the bad habits harder.
Got it. Okay, so we've covered make it obvious, that first law.
Yeah.
But what about those habits that aren't always so, well, attractive? Like exercising or eating healthy?
That's where the second law comes in. Make it attractive.
Okay, but how do you make something like, I don't know, broccoli more appealing?
Well, one strategy Clear suggests is called habit stacking.
Habit stacking, like stacking Legos.
Sort of.
Yeah.
It's about linking a new habit you want to build with an existing habit that you already enjoy.
Oh, okay, I see.
So let's say you want to start meditating in the mornings.
Yeah, that's something I've been meaning to try.
Well, instead of trying to create a whole new routine, you could stack it onto your existing coffee routine.
Oh, interesting.
So after you pour your first cup of coffee,
I could try meditating for a few minutes.
exactly, you're already in the groove of your morning routine, so adding a new habit to that flow
This just feels more natural.
makes it easier to stick with it.
Okay, I like that. Now, I'm all about making things easier, so that third law, make it easy, is definitely my jam.
Me too.
But how do you actually make a habit easy, especially when it's something challenging?
One of the simplest but most effective strategies is what Clear calls the 2-minute rule.
The 2-minute rule. Okay, what's that?
It's as simple as it sounds.
Yeah.
You break down any new habit into a 2-minute version.
So if I want to write for an hour each day, I start with just writing a single sentence.
Yeah, something like that. The goal is to make the first step so ridiculously easy that you can't say no.
I love that. It takes all the pressure off.
It does. And often, once you overcome that initial inertia, it's much easier to keep going.
It's like tricking your brain into getting started.
Exactly. Now, the last of those 4 laws, make it satisfying.
That one seems pretty important too, right?
It's crucial. Because, we live in this delayed return environment.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, the benefits of our good habits often take time to show up.
Right, like you don't see the results of exercise right away.
Exactly. So, we need to find ways to make those good habits more rewarding in the moment.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, there's this clever strategy called temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling. That sounds intriguing.
It is. It's where you pair an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure, like you only allow yourself to watch your favorite show while you're on the treadmill.
Oh, that's smart. So you're making the need to do more enjoyable.
Exactly. You're associating it with something you crave.
I like that. So we've got those 4 laws.
Yep.
But is there more to it than that?
There is. Clara argues that lasting behavior change often starts with something deeper. Identity change.
Identity change. Okay, now we're getting serious.
It sounds a bit heavy, but it's actually pretty simple. Imagine 2 people who want to vote.
Okay.
One person sees themselves as a voter, someone who actively participates.
Okay.
The other person just views voting as something they should do.
Gotcha.
Who do you think is more likely to actually show up at the polls?
I'm going to say the person who identifies as a voter?
Exactly. They've already aligned their identity with that action.
So our habits are actually a reflection of our identity.
They are. And it works the other way around, too.
Hmm.
If you see yourself as a healthy person, you're more likely to exercise.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is. It's about asking yourself, what kind of person do I want to be?
And then what are the habits that person embodies?
Exactly. And sometimes we need to challenge those limiting beliefs we have about ourselves.
Oh, I have plenty of those. Like, I'm not a morning person.
Right. Or I'm not creative.
Yeah, things like that.
Those beliefs can actually be shaping our habits instead of the other way around.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. Okay, so much to unpack here. We've covered those tiny changes,
Yeah.
the importance of systems, the 4 laws, and even the role of identity. It's a lot.
It is, but it's all connected.
It is. I'm starting to see how the pieces fit together.
Good. Now, before we move on, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this concept of the Goldilocks zone.
Oh, yeah. The Goldilocks zone, that's about finding the sweet spot of challenge, right?
Exactly. It's about working on tasks that are challenging enough to keep us engaged, but not so hard that we get overwhelmed.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually find that zone? It seems like it could be a bit elusive.
That's a great question. We'll dive deeper into that as we continue exploring atomic habits.
Awesome. I'm excited to keep unpacking these ideas.
Me too.
And see how they can help us all build those atomic habits that lead to lasting change.
Absolutely. It's a journey, but it's a powerful one.
I'm ready for it.
Even when you're in that Goldilocks zone, you're playing to your strengths, you've got your systems dialed in, there will still be times when you hit a plateau.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely been there. It's like you're putting in the effort but not seeing the results. It can be super discouraging.
Exactly. Clear calls this the plateau of latent potential. It's that phase where you're doing the work, making those tiny improvements, but the results aren't immediately visible. It's like you're applying heat to an ice cube. You can raise its temperature from, say, 25 degrees to 31 degrees, but it still looks like an ice cube.
Right. It hasn't melted yet.
Right. But you know that the ice cube is absorbing that heat energy.
Yeah, it's building up to something.
Precisely. And then at 32 degrees, boom, the ice suddenly melts.
That's
All that
insane.
effort you put in beforehand. Even though it seemed like nothing was happening, it was actually building up to this critical point of transformation.
So even when we don't see those immediate results, those consistent efforts are still working behind the scenes.
Exactly. And when that breakthrough finally comes, it often seems like an overnight success to everyone else.
But you know the truth.
Right. It was a result of all those small, consistent actions you took day after day.
It's like those overnight successes, they're often years in the making.
Precisely. It's all about those atomic habits, those tiny changes that compound over time.
That's a great reminder. So we've got to trust the process, even when it feels like nothing's happening.
Yeah, trust the process.
Now, you mentioned making good habits obvious and bad habits invisible.
Right.
Can you give me an example of how that works in real life?
Sure. Cleary uses this example of the Japanese railway system.
Okay.
They're known for their incredible punctuality and efficiency, and they have this practice called pointing and calling.
Pointing and calling, what's that?
It's where the train conductors physically point at signals and call out commands as they operate the train.
That seems a little excessive, doesn't it?
It might seem that way, but it serves a crucial purpose. It forces the conductors to be super present and aware of their actions,
See.
which significantly reduces the chance of errors.
So by verbalizing their actions, they're bringing more awareness to their work.
Exactly. And we can apply this same principle to our own habits.
How so?
Remember the habit scorecard we talked about?
Yeah, the one where you list out all your daily habits.
Right. It's about bringing awareness to those automatic behaviors we do without thinking.
Like brushing our teeth or checking our phones.
Exactly. Once you're aware of your habits, you can make conscious choices about which ones to cultivate and which ones to eliminate.
So it's about taking control of our autopilot,
Precisely.
making sure it's flying us toward our desired destination.
Exactly. And when it comes to making good habits more obvious, one of the most effective strategies is to design your environment to support those habits.
Oh, so like if I want to read more, I could create a cozy reading nook.
Yeah, with a comfy chair and good lighting.
Or if I want to eat healthier, I can make sure my kitchen is stocked with healthy foods.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Make those good habits obvious and those bad habits invisible.
I like that. Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Right. Now, flipping that idea, making bad habits invisible is often about increasing the friction associated with those behaviors.
Okay, interesting.
You know how Clear talks about the invention of cash register?
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, back in the late 1800s, this saloon owner named James Ritty was having a huge problem with employees stealing money.
Oh,
Yeah, there was no way to track cash transactions, so employees were just pocketing cash left and right.
I see. That's a big problem.
Big problem. So he comes across this new invention called Ritty's Incorruptible Cashier, the first cash register.
Wow.
It automatically locked the cash and receipts inside after each transaction, making it impossible for employees to steal.
So that's where cash registers came from. What a clever solution.
It was. And it's a great example of how we can make bad habits harder to do.
Okay, so how do we apply that to our own lives?
Well, think about it. If you want to cut back on TV, unplug it after each use.
Oh, that's a good one. Or even better, get rid of it altogether.
Right. Or if you want to reduce social media use, delete those apps from your phone.
I've tried that. It's hard.
It is. But there are also website blockers and things like that to make it harder.
So it's about creating those obstacles, making it less convenient to indulge in those bad habits.
Exactly. It's all about increasing the friction, making those bad habits harder to do.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered making good habits obvious and bad habits invisible. But what about the reward side of things? How do we make those good habits more satisfying, especially when the rewards are often delayed?
That's a great question. And it's something a lot of people struggle with.
I know I do.
But Atomic Habits offers some really helpful strategies for making those good habits more rewarding in the moment.
Okay, like what?
Well, one technique Clear suggests is habit tracking.
Oh, I love habit trackers. There's something so satisfying about checking off those boxes.
Exactly. It provides a tangible record of your efforts and creates a sense of accomplishment.
It's like a visual pat on the back for every step you take in the right direction.
I like that. It's a great way to stay motivated and see how far you've come.
And it can be really motivating to see those streaks building up. You don't want to break the chain.
Right. It becomes a little game.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got habit tracking. What else?
Another strategy is to use what Clear calls reinforcement.
The reinforcement. So like giving yourself a little reward.
Exactly. And these rewards don't have to be anything big or expensive. It could be as simple as enjoying a cup of tea after finishing a chapter of a book.
Or listening to your favorite playlist during a workout.
Right. Or taking a relaxing bath after a long day.
I love those. It's all about finding those little ways to make the process more enjoyable.
And celebrate those small wins along the way.
I like it. It's like enjoy the journey, not just the destination, right?
Exactly. By pairing good habits with positive feelings, you're training your brain to associate those habits with pleasure.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got all these great strategies, but how do we tailor them to our own individual personalities and preferences?
That's a great question. And it's where understanding your natural inclinations comes in.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, we all have unique tendencies and preferences. Some people are naturally introverted, while others are extroverted.
Right. Some people love routine, others prefer spontaneity.
Exactly. And Atomic Habits emphasizes that we need to find habits that align with our natural tendencies.
So it's about working with our personalities, not against them.
Exactly. For example, if you're someone who loves socializing,
You might join a group fitness class or find a workout buddy.
right, or if you thrive on competition, maybe you sign up for a race.
That makes so much sense. So it's about tapping into what motivates us intrinsically
It is, making those habits feel more like an extension of who we are.
rather than something we're forcing ourselves to do.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another important point, focusing on the process rather than just the outcome.
Okay, interesting. How does that tie into building better habits?
Well, when we get too fixated on that end goal,
Like losing weight or writing a book.
right, it can create a lot of pressure and anxiety.
And if we don't see results quickly enough.
It can be super demotivating.
Totally. So how do we shift our focus to the process?
It's about finding those moments of joy and satisfaction within the journey itself,
Okay.
rather than just focusing on that distant finish line.
So it's about finding those things that keep us engaged and motivated along the way.
Exactly. And this is where that flow state comes in.
Oh, yeah, flow state. That's like being in the zone, totally absorbed in what you're doing.
Exactly. Claire explains that flow state often occurs when we're working on tasks that are challenging enough to keep us engaged.
But not so overwhelming that we get stressed or frustrated.
Right. It's all about finding that Goldilocks zone.
So by finding that sweet spot of challenge and engagement, we can actually make those habits more enjoyable.
Exactly. And when a habit is enjoyable, it's much more likely to stick. Now, here's the thing. Even when we find that Goldilocks zone and those moments of flow, there's another obstacle we all face. Boredom.
Boredom. Why is boredom such a threat to our habits?
Well, think about it. When we first start a new habit, it's exciting and novel. We're motivated by the prospect of change.
Okay.
But as the habit becomes more routine, that initial excitement can wear off and we can start to feel bored.
Right. It's like the honeymoon phase of any new relationship.
Exactly. The initial passion and excitement fade over time.
So how do we combat that inevitable boredom and stay motivated when our habits start to feel monotonous?
Clear tells this great story about an elite coach who worked with Olympic athletes.
Okay.
He noticed that the difference between the best athletes and everyone else wasn't necessarily talent or genetics, but the ability to handle the boredom of training day after day.
Wow. So it's not about always feeling excited and motivated, but about showing up and doing the work even when it's not glamorous or thrilling.
Exactly. The ability to stick to the schedule even when you don't feel like it.
That's what separates those who achieve mastery from those who don't.
Exactly. And this applies to any area of life where you're trying to improve, whether it's your business, your art, your relationships, or your personal growth.
So it's all about embracing that discipline and consistency.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the best ways to cultivate that discipline is to focus on the process, as we discussed earlier. Find joy in those small steps, celebrate your wins, and don't let setbacks derail you.
It's all about embracing the journey with all its ups and downs and trusting that the results will follow.
Precisely. Now, Atomic Habits highlights another important point.
Okay, what's that?
It's not enough to just build good habits. We also need to continuously reflect on and refine them to
Oh,
make sure they're still serving us well.
that makes sense because our needs and goals can change over time.
Exactly. So our habits need to adapt accordingly.
So how do we do that?
Clear emphasizes the importance of what he calls reflection and review.
Okay.
He suggests regularly evaluating your habits and identifying areas where you can improve.
So it's like having a regular check-in with yourself.
Exactly. Asking questions like, are these habits still aligned with my goals and values?
Are they still helping me become the person I want to be?
Right. This process of reflection can help you identify habits that are no longer serving you,
As well as opportunities to optimize your existing habits.
or even create new ones.
It's like spring cleaning for your habits.
I love that. Now, one of the most powerful strategies for refining your habits is to focus on what Clear calls the 1% rule.
Oh yeah, the 1% rule, that's about those small improvements that add up over time.
Exactly. And it applies to refining our existing habits, too.
How so?
Think about it. Even seemingly small tweaks can lead to significant improvements over time.
Okay, I'm listening.
For example, if you're a runner, you might experiment with different warm-up routines.
Or try a new running form, maybe find a podcast that inspires you to run farther.
Precisely. Or if you're trying to build a writing habit, maybe you experiment with different writing prompts.
Or a new writing style, or even join a writer's group for feedback.
Exactly. It's about adopting that mindset of continuous improvement, always seeking those 1% improvements that could make a big difference in the long run.
So it's like that Japanese concept of kaizen.
Yes. That philosophy of continuous improvement through small, incremental changes.
That's a great way to think about it. Okay, so we've got to be willing to experiment and tweak those habits.
We do. But here's the thing. One of the biggest obstacles we face when trying to refine our habits is the tendency to get stuck in our ways.
Oh, I know that feeling. It's so easy to just keep doing things the way you've always done them.
It is. But Clear highlights the importance of challenging those assumptions and beliefs about ourselves.
So it's about questioning those limiting beliefs, like I'm not a morning person or I'm not creative.
Exactly. Those beliefs might be based on outdated information or simply a lack of experimentation.
I see, so we need to be open to trying new things.
We do, even if they feel a little uncomfortable at first.
It's about updating our mental software.
Yes, replacing those old, outdated beliefs with new, empowering ones.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about reflecting on our habits, refining them, and challenging those limiting beliefs.
Right.
Anything else?
One more key strategy for refining your habits is to seek feedback from others.
Ah, that's a good one. It's about recognizing that we don't have to do this alone.
Exactly. Clear talks about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who support your goals.
And can offer valuable insights.
All right, this could be mentors, coaches, accountability partners, or even just friends and family.
It's like having a team of advisors and cheerleaders.
I like that. It's about building that support system to help you stay on track.
So it's about leveraging the wisdom and experience of others.
Exactly. And remember, even with the best systems and support, we're all human, and we're going to stumble from time to time.
I think that's something a lot of people struggle with. It's so easy to get discouraged and give up when we make mistakes.
It is. But it's crucial to remember that setbacks are a natural part of the process.
They are.
Atomic Habits really stresses the importance of self-compassion.
Self-compassion, so like being kind to ourselves.
Exactly. It's about not beating yourself up when you slip up, but viewing those setbacks as opportunities to learn and grow.
Okay, so instead of dwelling on the failure, we need to focus on learning from it and moving forward.
Precisely. Clear actually suggests using what he calls the 2-day rule.
The 2-day rule, what's that?
It's a simple but powerful rule that says you should never miss a habit 2 days in a row.
So if you miss a workout one day,
You make sure you get back to it the next day.
it's about maintaining that consistency.
Right. Even when life throws those inevitable curveballs.
So it's not about being perfect, but about getting back on track as quickly as possible.
Exactly. Remember, perfection is not the goal. Progress is the goal.
It's about embracing that journey with all its imperfections and setbacks.
And focusing on continuous improvement. It really is. And that's what makes Atomic Habits so powerful.
Yeah.
It's not about some drastic overnight change.
Right.
It's about making those small adjustments to your daily routines and your mindset.
The ones that compound over time.
Exactly. And eventually, they lead to those remarkable outcomes.
I think that's one of the most empowering things about this whole approach. It's not about having some superhuman willpower.
No, not at all.
It's about understanding how habits work
Yeah,
and then using that knowledge to create a system that actually works for you.
precisely. It's about working with your brain, not against it.
Okay, I like that.
And that brings us to another fascinating concept from the book, the idea of habit shaping.
Habit shaping. Okay, I haven't heard about that one. What is that?
Think of it like learning a new skill, like playing the guitar. You wouldn't expect to pick it up and play like Jimi Hendrix on your first try, right?
Oh, definitely not.
You'd probably start with those basic chords.
Right, maybe a simple song.
Exactly. You'd gradually build up your skills over time.
So habit shaping is about applying that same principle to our habits
Precisely. You break down the desired habit into smaller steps.
and then gradually increase the difficulty.
Exactly. It's like starting with a light weight at the gym and gradually adding more weight as you get stronger.
I see. So it's about making those incremental changes to avoid getting overwhelmed.
Right. And by focusing on those small wins along the way,
Keeps our motivation high.
precisely.
Okay, habit shaping, that's a great one.
It is. Now, let's talk about another powerful concept. Implementation intentions.
Implementation intentions. Okay, that sounds a bit intimidating.
Oh, no, it's actually quite simple. It's about creating a clear plan for when and where you'll perform a specific habit.
Oh, okay, I see.
So instead of just saying, I'm going to exercise more, you'd say,
I'm going to go for a 30-minute run at 7 a.m. in the park on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
precisely. You're removing any ambiguity or decision fatigue from the equation.
So you're basically pre-programming your autopilot.
Exactly. And research shows that implementation intentions are really effective for those habits we tend to procrastinate on.
I like that. It takes the guesswork out of it.
It does. And it helps you stay consistent.
Okay, implementation intentions. I'm adding that to my toolkit.
Good. Now, remember that habit stacking we talked about?
Oh yeah, linking a new habit with an existing one.
Right. Well, we can actually combine habit stacking with implementation intentions.
Oh, how do we do that?
So you could say, after I pour my first cup of coffee, I will meditate for 5 minutes at my desk.
So you're stacking the meditation habit onto the existing coffee habit.
Exactly. And you're making it super specific with the implementation intention.
I see. It's like creating a chain reaction of good habits.
It is. Each habit becomes a cue for the next one.
Okay, habit shaping, implementation intentions, and habit stacking all working together.
It's a powerful combination.
So what else can we do to make those habits stick? Any more insights from Atomic Habits?
Well, Clear also talks about the 4 laws of behavior change, but this time he flips them around.
Flips them around. What do you mean?
Well, he shows how we can use those same laws to break bad habits.
Oh, interesting. So instead of making it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
You do the opposite. You make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying.
I see. So you're basically making those bad habits less appealing.
Exactly. Let's say you want to stop mindlessly scrolling on social media.
Okay, yeah, that's one I struggle with.
Well, you could delete those apps from your phone. That makes it invisible.
Mhm.
You could remind yourself of the negative consequences of too much social media. That makes it unattractive.
Right, like feeling anxious or comparing yourself to others.
Exactly. You could log out of your accounts or keep your phone in another room. That makes it difficult.
I see. So you're creating obstacles.
And you could track your screen time and set limits, rewarding yourself for staying within those boundaries.
So you're making it unsatisfying to go over your limit.
Precisely. It's all about using those 4 laws to your advantage.
This is so helpful. I'm definitely going to try this.
Good. Now, I think one of the most important takeaways from all of this is the importance of being patient with yourself.
Patience, that's a big one.
It is. Building better habits is a journey. It takes time.
It does. It's easy to get discouraged if we don't see results right away.
But remember, just like those tiny changes can compound over time to create remarkable results, so too can those small, consistent efforts in the realm of habit change.
So we've got to trust the process, even when it's slow.
And celebrate those small wins along the way. They really do matter.
They do. This has been such a fantastic deep dive into Atomic Habits. I feel like I've learned so much. We covered the power of those tiny changes, the importance of systems, the 4 laws, and so many other strategies for building better habits.
It's been a great discussion.
It really has. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they start putting these ideas into practice?
Well, I think the key takeaway is to remember that building better habits is a journey, not a destination. It's about making progress, one small step at a time.
It's about embracing the journey.
It is.
Yeah.
And never giving up on becoming the best version of yourself.
So well said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Atomic Habits.
My pleasure. It's been fun.
And to everyone listening, remember those tiny changes. They can make a world of difference. Keep those atomic habits going.